And welcome back to Janky AF and Year of the Aerostar, episode 24. Well, really great one for you today. As you know, I always try to match my shirt to the Aerostar. Not only is this a sort of cream color with some accents on it, but also I would say a strikingly 80s shirt, and I think it represents this van very well. So without further ado, here we have a 1986 Ford Aerostar XLT listed in Warren, Michigan for the price of $1,234, which basically means that's not the real price. If there were cars listed for $1,234, that would be great, and certainly I wish this one was listed for $1,234. However, that basically just means make an offer. Now, I don't love it when people put in that price. I think you should at least start off with a basic price. A lot of times you'll see also $999,999. I like for the seller to set a baseline price, so that's my little commentary right there. But as you can see here, we're burying the lead. This is an amazing van that has been decked out with just about every possible accessory you could ever imagine. Now, the one glaring tragedy in this post is that this is a single picture post. However, it's such an incredible picture that I think we will still have plenty to talk about. So, seller's description: needs work, very little rust, runs and drives. So right there, it does run and drive. It needs work, but it runs and drives. So I'll take that bargain. Willing to trade for almost any dirt bike, go-kart, four-wheeler. Seat 7. Whew. Where do we start? First of all, this is a 1986, which means it's the first year of the Ford Aerostar, the inaugural year. It has a very special place in my heart because I own a 1986 Ford Aerostar, and I've owned two 1986 Ford Aerostars. Of course, I sold my other one to my good buddy Evan, and eventually, I promise, we will have some wonderful content on both of those vans. I always say it's the 86, the first year of production, before they worked out all the kinks. I say it as if it's a good thing, and I'm not sure why. I just like saying it. So much to consider here. First, the color. It's almost like a yellow. It's like a beige, but it's almost like a light butterscotch yellow. I would love to see this van in person. The paint does look quite immaculate. It looks in very good condition. Boy, okay, let's just go down the list. First of all, you have this beautiful little bug guard on your front, which looks very nice. You have some fog lights or rally style lights located. Now, in the last Aerostar we did, the Michael Jordan Aerostar, we saw very similar fog lights to these, or racing lights, but they were mounted above the bumper, sort of up here. I do like them down low. It's pretty sleek, and you don't sort of like mess with any of the beautiful pristine bumper. The bumper looks to be in very good condition. You have sort of a little splitter down here, which looks like it could be from the sport edition of the Aerostar, but that also seems to be not original to this vehicle. I'm not sure. Maybe the 86s, they offered this sort of bumper style, but I doubt it. And it almost looks like it was added onto the existing bumper. Perhaps this is a replacement bumper from a sport edition. That's possible. I don't know. Second, you have some aftermarket wheels here. These look like maybe the Mustang made a wheel like this. Anybody out there, you'll have to comment and try to figure out what wheels these went to, if they are a Ford OEM product of some type or just a straight aftermarket wheel. In either case, it looks like your center caps are slightly different or aftermarket, so perhaps it just is an aftermarket 5-spoke wheel. I feel like it fits the van quite nice. Moving up here, you have your wonderful V6 logo that Ford's been doing for a long time. They also had the V8 logo where the 8 kind of comes through the V. I believe this could be original to the vehicle because they did obviously offer a V6, the 2.8 liter, which this probably is, being an 86, which would be the carbureted version, the Cologne V6, as opposed to the Vulcan V6, which was the 3.0 liter that came just 2 years later. after they sort of realized their initial engine choices probably weren't the greatest. So that became a fuel-injected motor, and then from there on out, V6s were the only things offered. But in 86 and 87, you could get either the 4-cylinder Lima, which was fuel-injected, or the carbureted V6 Cologne, which was the upgrade. Next, moving right down, you have these wonderful running boards, which do not look like either the sport running boards or the normal sort of aluminum sort of basic running boards that they put on some of these vans. This has a beautiful running board that's integrated all the way into sort of a fender flare here, and I gotta say, this is very, very well done. Maybe this was a factory option, I don't know, but as you can see, it goes all the way down and has a rear wheel well arch as well. Beautiful, beautiful piece, I gotta say, and very nicely done, very nicely installed. It looks like this was a two-tone of some variety, although cream over gray is a color combination I've never seen. Now, obviously, in the early days, the colors were slightly different. In the 80s, as they progressed to the 90s, they had a sort of a different set of colors. Wonderful, and you do have your original Aerostar XLT badging here with the red XLT, which I believe was more sort of the earlier vans, and then I believe it just went to like a gray XLT. You can't see it, but this says XLT in that little red area right here. Your towing mirror, your big style towing mirror, this is probably factory. A lot of the early 80s models had these, and they transitioned later to sort of a normal sort of plastic side mirror, which was much smaller, but also quite functional, I will say, after driving my 1993 Ford Aerostar, which I just heard about today, actually, and we're hoping that's going to be done very soon. And then, of course, you have, the list goes on, you have this rain guard here, but it's like a giant bubble that covers up half the window. Certainly, I'm sure it keeps out the rain, and you know, if you're a cigarette smoker, which I'm guessing someone who drove this van was at some time or another, could be wrong about that, with your little sort of white piping here, but again, integrated very nicely, fits very nicely. This has like every Aerostar accessory that you can no longer find. They're impossible to track down, and my favorite of which I believe is the front spoiler here, this sort of you know, exterior sun visor, you may call it, but it fits so well, it looks so good, it offers this like overhang. I think it looks wonderful on the Aerostar. Again, I'm sure there were aftermarket companies that were making these at one point in time. Now they're impossible to track down. Every time I see one online, I'll ask, whether it be Facebook or Instagram, like, hey, like, where'd you get that factory spoiler? And everybody always just says, oh, they're impossible to find nowadays. So if you were to ever be able to find one, I'm sure it wouldn't be cheap. Next, moving up, you have the limo spoiler, which was, you know, if you've seen, I believe this, the limousine in the Dumb and Dumber, the first scene of that movie, I think has one of these. I could be wrong about that. The limo spoiler is one of my favorite things ever. It's just sort of this wonderfully sculpted. It gives a, you know, aerospace connotation in it, but just the sculptural aesthetic qualities of this, with it swoops up and then it swoops around. It looks like a boomerang. I've always thought those were cool, and that's placed on here as well. And it looks like your front spoiler may even have some running lights on it. I can't quite tell because of the resolution of the picture, but it may even be decked out with some lights, which wouldn't surprise me considering we have this running light on the side here, which is almost like a hearse style running light. And of course, right next to that, we have sort of a grab handle, which also looks like an aftermarket accessory that's been put on. And shockingly, none of these things have caused the vehicle to develop any rust where they were installed. So that is quite magnificent. It looks like we have some sort of a window tint here, whether that's factory or not. This almost looks like it even bubbles or bulges out a little bit too. So I'm wondering if that has an actual sort of like cover slapped on it, or if it just is some sort of like three-dimensional tinting situation that of course matches perfectly your rain guard, and it kind of all seems to flow together and gently gets more and more bulbous as it comes out here. It also looks like, I'm just noticing that there might be a dash mat here. Now, I love dashboard covers. I think a carpeted dashboard cover is a very cool accessory. I would like to track one of those down one day. Also very, very nice. You have, it looks like a factory roof rack here. Being the XLT version, that does not surprise me. Whew, you have some subtle pinstriping going on. So, you know, you could say this is gaudy and you could say that it's overdone, but I think it's kind of like a beautiful, beautiful time capsule of every single possible accessory that you could slap onto an Aerostar or any vehicle for that matter is on this one. And being a standard length and not an extended length, it just, everything is compact in that package, and it's just like, you know, just a feast for the eyes and sensory overload almost. It's just really quite special. I have never seen an Aerostar that is quite like this one. And of course, last but certainly not least, this is like sort of the pièce de résistance to me, is this wonderful graphics package that we have going on. Now this says Aerostar XLT electronic. Now, of course, if you have seen your way around a couple of Aerostars, you will know and notice that this electronic is the same sort of, you know, same sort of script or font as the Aerostar itself. Very, very 80s. Very, very sort of like, what do you want to call it? Cyberpunk. I mean, the Cybertruck itself obviously connotes a lot of this sort of like 80s techno graphics, what the 80s thought the future may look like. And of course you have all your buttons and beeps and boops, and whether it's Back to the Future or Knight Rider or arcade games, any of these things that kind of like crystallize the 80s for us. So you'll notice that this electronic badging is very, very similar, if not identical, to the badging that went on the all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive version of the Aerostar, the electronic four-wheel drive. So of course, and because we only have one picture here, I have done a little digging, just a quick couple of Google searches, and you'll see now as I Googled the Ford Aerostar electronic four-wheel drive, and it's not electronic four-wheel drive, it's electronic four-wheel drive, okay? I'm very, very adamant about that. So, if you Google it, you'll find some nice pictures of the actual badging. And we can see here, oh, my computer is being uncooperative. Hopefully my face is not blocking this. The electronic four-wheel drive. And then, of course, the four-wheel drive gets a little strike through the actual font itself, and they are actually two different fonts. Here you have your sort of, you know, very Cybertronic 80s font, but then the four-wheel drive gets almost a more 70s disco font. I think this badge itself is a piece of art. I love this badge, and I've always wanted to own an electronic four-wheel drive version of the Aerostar. One, just to have, and two, also because they are quite practical. You hear things about, I've seen videos of like an Aerostar versus, I don't know, a RAV4 or something like that, try to do a hill climb, and the Aerostar blew it away. So, and from all accounts, from everything I've read and everything I've heard from people, the electronic four-wheel drive system is quite robust and does quite work well, whether you're climbing up a mountain pass or trying to navigate snowy roads or something like that. So, the funny thing though on this Aerostar is it does not say electronic four-wheel drive, it just simply says electronic, which is hilarious, because what is electronic about it? I mean, obviously it has electronic systems in it, but it is not an electric vehicle. Now, as an aside, there were two EV Aerostars that were made between Ford and another company, and I'll do a video on this. I actually tried to contact the gentleman that still owns one of them, and unfortunately I think I was a little too enthusiastic about it, and I think I scared him off because I never heard back after the initial correspondence, which sadly is a story of my life. I oftentimes I think scare people away with my enthusiasm. However, I'll be persistent and try to get in touch with them again. But there was an EV Aerostar, two of them actually, that were made as sort of a partnership between Ford again and this other company. Now they were just lead acid batteries. It was a very now you would say outdated EV system, but they were made, and that's another great just sort of little chapter in the Aerostar's history, and just an added piece of the puzzle of versatility and how robust and all-encompassing this vehicle was in all its uses and potential uses. So let's dig deeper. Okay, we have the electronic four-wheel drive badging, and here you can see another example of it from an article, and this is a great article actually on thedrive.com that I'll go into further in another video. A little faded here. I dug further, And what I found on World Vector logo was download Aerostar XLT 56735 Vector SVG logo. Now this looks like probably what the template was for the graphic that this person has installed on their Aerostar, right? Looks very similar to this. However, at some point, either because it wouldn't fit or because they just wanted to, retrofit it here, this has been slightly altered to remove the four-wheel drive portion of it. Now I will have to look closely here and see exactly. It looks like there's this line that goes under the electronic here, and which is still present there. So we just have to see, they've sort of rounded off the corner here, and it's a nice job. It's not a flat corner here. If you catch my drift, it's actually rounded off and sculpted. So whoever did the graphics work on this did a nice job of not simply cropping it, but actually rounding off that line. Subtle little detail. I appreciate it. But here is probably the logo that was used to make this graphic, and they've obviously altered it slightly to just say electronic, which in a way defeats the purpose, but I appreciate the craftsmanship and sort of the humor in just saying electronic XLT. And they probably wanted it to be as big as possible on there to brag to everybody that they had a Aerostar. I do not believe this is an all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive model, because I don't think the four-wheel drive model came out till a little bit later in the Aerostar. But nonetheless, that's a deep dive on this graphics package and what I can surmise. So I will have to remember to download this, because I can use this somewhere. Whether it be for my own Aerostar or making some sort of, I don't know, merch or whatever it may be. Wow, just look at this, everything about it. I would love to, I don't know if you can actually get this font or if someone's created a font. I believe I have looked into that at some point in time, but I'm not sure if you can get it for numbers and all the letters, or if you just have to sort of create one on your own. But certainly one of the greatest font badging on any vehicle I've ever seen. I think it captures the vehicle perfectly, and what I really love about it is actually the A in the Aerostar, how it droops down here, kind of mimics, right, the the profile of the vehicle itself, and this long hood and windshield line here. So just everything about the Aerostar is very cohesive and has a perfect sense of continuity about it. That's what I love about the Aerostar so much. It was so aspirational. They didn't mail anything in with the design and the marketing of the vehicle. Like, it really is this aspirational vehicle, and it really stands alone. Everything about it makes sense within the context of itself. One of the reasons I love the Aerostar so much, and it is this beautiful, beautiful little spaceship. So again, I wish there were more pictures. I want to see more. Perhaps I could ask the seller for some more pictures. Incidentally, you have this great sort of random picture of a truck with a couch on it. That just sort of, I don't know, adds to the allure of this photograph. Kind of funny in some sort of way that I cannot exactly place. Just a breathtaking time capsule. Now, I don't know how much this would go for. They're willing to trade for almost any dirt bike. So what's the price of a good dirt bike? I don't know, a few $1,000s. So again, as I talked about in last video, Aerostars are starting to become, at least on the high level, ones that are really pristine, low mileage, especially from the early years, have started to take on a bit of a cult following. There's been one that's been auctioned off on Bring a Trailer, and there's now one at like sort of a classic car website, which I keep promising to bring. I should really do that before it gets sold. But I would still venture to say that even with 200,000 miles, you could have the motor totally rebuilt, or you could even put in a donor motor. And yes, it's not original or numbers matching or anything like that, but I would still say this Aerostar with all these accessories is easily one of the most unique out there, and I would happily take this for $3,000 or $4,000 than the other one that's listed for, like, you know, between $9,000 and $12,000 are the two other highest Aerostars that I've seen recently. You know, we have to see what the interior looks like and if that's in good condition or not. But judging by the outside, I would have to say it's probably in pretty good fettle. Whew. So, boy, sensory overload here. This is just an immaculate, stunning, handsome, dashing Aerostar, and quite a time capsule. A really, really special one. I hope that someone buys this and preserves it and gets the necessary work done to get it running in good order, and it should be cruising down the boulevards for many, many years to come. I think if you took this to any car show, especially with all the period accurate sort of accessories on it, you would get a lot of attention at a car show with this vehicle. Because you don't see them much anymore, and especially ones in this condition from this vintage. And of course you have, you know, the first generation grille. It's funny how the 80s Aerostars really do stick out from the 90s Aerostars, and I think that's actually kind of like a credit to Ford. So while the whole vehicle still is unmistakably Aerostar, the 80s to the 90s transition really did happen, and the 80s ones are quite distinguishable, and I think they give it just that little extra flair because it was a product of the 80s. It was, of course, the 86s were actually built in 85. So now you're in sort of like mid 80s, and clearly, like, you know, design-wise a product of the 80s, but also fit quite well in the 90s. So I'm blathering on, but it's really, really just, I mean, this is sort of like an iconic Aerostar. This is a quintessential Aerostar. This represents everything that the Aerostar was when it came out, which was just a aesthetic tour de force, and really a product of its time. And in the 80s, if you were driving around in this thing, boy, like, what a hot van, you know. Now in 2022, obviously some of the mechanicals are a little bit dated, and to daily drive this, you're not going to have a ton of power, although perfectly adequate with the V6 motor. And again, like they say in the description, it seats 7 people, still very practical. And a showstopper, you know, again, if you brought this to an auto show, I think you'd get a lot of attention. And that in itself carries a certain cachet and a certain currency to it, especially in the classic car world where everyone's sort of looking for something unique and different, and oh, hey, remember these. Whew. Just the exterior color is off_white. Which is funny because Off-White, of course, is now a extremely popular and extremely lucrative brand. So that little touch there, that little Off-White there, sort of is a perfect temporal transition to how the Aerostar is still extremely relevant as a cultural icon and as design that has aged well and is in fact timeless. And anything that's timeless will, of course, age well, because it is divorced from time itself. Whew, there you go. A 1986 Ford Aerostar XLT. Just a dream machine right here. I really hope this is preserved. If anyone out there happens to buy this vehicle, Michigan's a little far from me, and like I said, money's a little tight right now at Janky AF to be making discretionary expenditures such as vans like these. But I hope someone buys this. Please, please, someone buy this, take care of it, preserve it, get it fixed, get it running right. And when you do, let me know, because I would probably travel to Michigan just to take a few minutes to drive this thing. Whew. Or if anyone has a free dirt bike they'd like to give me so that I could trade it to this person to get this Aerostar, then let's talk. So, there you have it. This has been another just inspiring episode, for me anyways, of Year of the Aerostar here on Janky AF. And until next time, Janky do Thanky.
One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.